Hi everyone, welcome back to Tiffany's Fine Art. I'm Tiffany and today we're going to do something completely different. If you've been watching my channel at all, you notice that I am primarily an oil painter, but I've been getting a lot of questions lately about if I work in acrylics and do I have any tips or tricks about them. So I decided this would be a perfect time to do an all acrylics painting. And that is what we have back here. I did the Milky Way with some pine trees silhouetted down here at the bottom. And I am going to go over how I did that and show you step by step how to get through this with a bunch of tips and tricks. And instead of an easel today, I am using this drafting table that I just purchased and I'm in love with. It is a glass top and it has all these little slots right here to hold my brushes, and it has a bunch of little compartments on both sides of it. It's got drawers down there at the bottom that can hold up to like 110 pounds. And I think this holds up to 130 pounds or something that you can set on top of this. So it's really cool. And this lays flat or brings up to use as an easel is really awesome. As well as I got a bunch of new brushes. These are really cool, and I'll show you how much detail that you can get with these brushes when I'm working on this painting. So if you want to check out these brushes or this drafting table, I'm going to have the link to both of those in the description below so you can check those out if you like them. All right. I'm done rambling, so grab your paintbrush and let's go paint. And if you notice, I don't know if you can see in here, from the bracer boards, there is a little part right here, and the way I do that is I have these little poster boards things, and I just kind of shove them in here and push them along into the side like that, and it gives it a little extra something so these boards don't make the canvas bend. And as you can tell, I sanded this to make it smoother, which leaves a little bit of gesso. So I'm going to take a little bit of this and clean it off. And see why it needs to be cleaned. And I will be using my acrylic paints. This little desk that I have has little drawers, and so I use Liquitex Soft Body. So I've picked out all the colors that I need, or that I think I might need, so I can have them readily available for me right here. I'm going to take one of my number 12, and over here to the side I just have a little tub of water, and I just brush and then kind of like dab off so there's not too much water on my brush. And then even more, dab it off right there. So I'm just going to wet the canvas down with this brush really quick. So I want to start off with a light pink color for the bottom of the sky. So I'm taking the alizarin crimson and some titanium white and just mixing them together. So I want to add the base of our kind of sunset right above the tree line. So if this whole bottom corner is going to be pine trees, I'm going to start this pink down low, but not all the way to the bottom, because we're going to be covering that up anyway, so there's no point in wasting paint down there. Let's do a lot more. I'm starting to like this little purpley color a little bit better, and what I'm using is ultramarine blue mixed in with alizarin crimson and titanium white. And titanium white is a very opaque white, so against this black canvas, it really helps it to pop. If we were to use a transparent color, it would show up a lot darker than it actually is. And I am not a fan of mixing a ton of paint, especially when it comes to acrylics, because they dry so fast, you'll end up just wasting a ton. So I always just put a little bit on my canvas or on my palette at a time, and then I mix it slowly together and adding water the entire time. And just clip to this table that I have, as I have a Mr. bottle, and it's really perfect to buy something like this around summertime because there's Mr. bottles all over the place. And it works very great, actually. It gives a beautiful fine mist over it and just helps everything to stay wet longer. So I make sure to spray my palette every once in a while. And every single time I remix, I mix it darker than the purple before to show that it is receding into the atmosphere. It always, when you're working with skies, the lower you go, it's always lighter, and the higher you go up into the sky, it gets darker, no matter what kind of sky that you're dealing with. Even if it's broad daylight and the sun is way up high in the sky, you're still going to deal with it lighter at the bottom with a gradient getting darker to the top. So I'm adding some Mars black and a little bit more ultramarine blue right now because I want it to become a very dark color on the sides and up at the top. And cannot forget the sides of the canvas. What I really love about gallery wrapped canvases like this is this can be hung on the wall without being framed. So it could save you a ton of money not having to frame this picture. But keeping the outsides dark and this vignette style down at the bottom that we're going to do with the pine trees brings your eye into the Milky Way that we're going to paint in just a little while. Now, because black can be a very dull color, if you've noticed, I added a little bit of ultramarine blue into my black, and it still looks black. It's a very, very dark color. It just gives a little depth into the black. So the first layers of any painting normally look pretty harsh. So right now I'm going in and I'm doing my second layer and making that gradient a little bit more smoother to go from this purplish pinkish color all the way up into black. And I even think that that pink was a little too bright, so I knocked it down a little bit because I don't want this sky to take away from our Milky Way, and I want our Milky Way to be bright. So I want that contrast between the sky and the Milky Way. So I'm just dulling it down just a little bit, but I'm also just smoothing it out. Now that our sky is completely dry, I dried it with a hair dryer. I'm going to grab my number 10 filbert and I'm just going to go in with a blue, and I want to add in, this is phthalo blue green shade, and it's a turquoise color. It's a very bright blue, and I want to add that into a little bit of ultramarine blue. Now I just want to draw out my Milky Way with this semi-dark color of ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and a little bit of titanium white just so it shows against the black background. And I want to draw this in fairly quickly just to get an idea of where it's going to go and give it an underpainting for the additional lighter layers to sit on top of. And I slowly just blend it out with the same brush that I'm using. Now I just added a little bit of titanium white to that mixture, and I'm just adding in a little bit of that and taking a very light or very soft mop brush. I think it's actually for watercolor, and I am just blending that out. Now this I'm adding Brilliant Purple, and it's a beautiful lavender purple color, and I'm just adding a little bit of titanium white to that, and then we will blend all that out. And this is me drying it. I use a hair dryer, because if you try to layer on top of wet acrylic paint, all you're going to do is smudge what's underneath or lift that paint up off the canvas, both of which you probably don't want to do. So make sure the layer is completely dry before going on top of it and creating another layer. And I just have a little round brush, and I'm just dotting on all throughout this and just creating a bunch of texture within this Milky Way. And then I go in and I just soften out the edges. I leave a little bit of those harsh lines on the inside of it, and I just blend enough to soften out the outer lines of the Milky Way. So I'm just going to go through this process over and over. So right now I have a very stiff bristled brush, nothing fancy, and I'm going to go into my titanium white and just add some stars. And I'm going to dry all that and make sure that it is completely dry to the touch before I go over top of it again. And I'm going to glaze a little of the stars just to push them back into the painting a little bit. And that will make it look like there's depth into there. I know it kind of looks like I just covered them all up. It's hard to see in the video, but they're actually just light colored. So now I'm just taking that same stiff brush and I'm going into my purples and my blues and all different colors, and I'm just stippling on in the middle of this Milky Way so I can add a bunch of texture really quickly and really easily. And I always start in the middle of the Milky Way and then start to stipple outward, and what that will do is that when the paint slowly comes off the brush, it will look like it's starting to blend outward, and it will just create this blend all by itself. So I blended all of that with a blender brush, and I'm going back in with a smaller little round brush, and I'm just creating little lines throughout this to brighten up the center of the Milky Way. And every few strokes that I do while the paint is still wet, I blend it with this very soft brush. And all I'm doing again is just blending enough to soften the edges. I don't want the stroke of the brush to completely disappear. I just want to blend and soften the edges. And doing that over and over, that's going to create a bunch of little detailed textures as well. Adding a little bit more phthalo blue. Like I said, I always add it a little bit at a time because I would rather have to add more than waste a bunch of paint because acrylics dry so fast. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking that phthalo blue and some titanium white, and that is what I'm making some stars with. If you look up in the sky, not all of them are bright white. So if you want to add that depth to your stars, make some a different color, and that'll make them look like they're farther in the distance. And do not forget the sides of the canvas, because this is a gallery wrapped canvas. We don't want to forget that. Now, one thing I love about the Liquitex soft body paints, they make this iridescent silver color, and that is right now what I'm doing. I added a little bit in the stiff brush to make some stars, and then I went along and I just took a small little liner brush and I put dots here and there, and that will make this, when you move it against the light, it will catch the light, reflect light differently, and kind of shimmer. And I really like that with the stars because it really makes the stars look like they're shimmering. So now I have a number 1 round brush, and I am just going in with straight Mars black, and I am just outlining where all these trees down here are going to go. So these are all the trunks of the trees sticking up. I know it looks really funny, a bunch of lines, but if you also notice, all of these lines are pointing straight to the Milky Way. And what that does in composition is it leads your eye to the focal point, which we want to be the Milky Way. In a composition, there are a few things that that help you to establish the focal point. One of them are lines. Where are the lines in the painting? Those can quite literally point you to where your focal point wants to be. The other main thing to help establish a focal point is contrast. So I am making these pine trees a Mars black, is the blackest black you can go. So you've got black there and black around on the edges, and that will draw your eye into the Milky Way and keep you focused there. So I wanted to bring you up close to show you how detailed these little brushes can get. And I was thinking I was going to have to just do the main part of these trees and then switch to a liner brush to get the tiny details at the very tip of all the branches. But these brushes just blew me away. I have been scrubbing away at this canvas and a previous painting that I've been doing with these brushes, and they are not falling apart. I've had no shedding with these brushes, and they still bounce back to that point that I really like, and I'm able to get all of these very fine details using just the tip of this round brush. So just with this brush, I am able to do all of these trees. I can do the main thick part of it, and I can also do the very, very tiny detailed branches and needles of these pine trees. These brushes really blew me away. And the best thing about them is they are extremely cheap in a pack. So if you like how detailed I'm getting all these trees, make sure to look at that link below and just check them out because they really are incredible. Now, and what you should pay attention to while working with pine trees, there's a few things. One, look at all the sky that is shining through all of the little limbs. And if you want to make a tree look realistic, make sure to leave a lot of holes throughout the limbs because trees are not a solid color. They have a lot of breaks throughout them. And these pine trees, the branches are it's kind of like a smiley face. They go up and then the needles, little needles come off of them. And there are some that are really wide and thick and some that are really skinny and tall. So make sure that when you're doing this, you're getting all those variations throughout this so it looks more realistic. And I'm just doing all the fine details now. So I'm just going to finish this up and show you the final piece. And here's the final piece. It might look different depending on what light is hitting it. So if it looks a little different from the video, that's probably why, just the difference in the light. So I hope you all really enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun. I hope that you were able to follow along and do your own painting just like this. And if you do, please tag me on any of my social media sites, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or my Facebook page, and just prop up a picture of yours, and I would love to see how well yours went. So see you all in the next video. Bye guys!